The appeals for the City Harvest Church trial ended today after 5 days in the Court of Appeal. The 6 appellants, John Lam, Kong Hee, Sharon Tan, Chew Eng Han, Tan Yi Ping and Serena Wee, argued against their convictions and sentences, while the prosecution appealed for longer sentences, arguing that the sentences imposed by the court below were manifestly inadequate. The appeal was heard uniquely by a panel of 3 judges: Judge of Appeal Chow Hick Tin and Justices Woo Bee Lee and Chan Seng On. All the defense lawyers and Chew argued that the case for criminal breach of trust had not been made out by the prosecution and that hence there should be no conviction. Their united argument was that none of the 6 had thought it was illegal to do what they did. In the event that the appeal judges found that wrongful loss had actually occurred, the appellants appealed for much lighter sentences. The prosecution, citing their disagreements with the trial judge's sentencing, which ranged from 1.5 to 8 years, appealed to have the sentences extended to between 5 to 12 years for the 6 appellants. On Monday, Senior Counsel Srinivasan told the court that the odd situation in this case was that the use of the building fund was not clearly wrongful. He pointed out that throughout the trial proceedings that spanned 146 days, the prosecution had not brought in experts to prove that the transactions were not investments and that the owner of the funds, City Harvest Church, had not complained that the funds had been wrongly used. He also said that the investments were genuine both as a matter of fact and as a matter of intent. On the appellant's intentions, Mr. Srinivasan argued that everything that the auditors and lawyers knew was what the appellants themselves knew, and that the professionals had seen no reason to raise any red flags. The 6 therefore had no reason to think that the investment was a wrong use of funds or that they were not legally entitled to make the investment. He urged the court to not just look at things with the benefit of hindsight, but to look at the appellant's state of mind as the events were happening at the time they were making the decisions. In his replies today, Mr. Srinivasan said that City Harvest Church was a church that had its own way of evangelizing and that it was not for the prosecution to set the standard for CHC. Serena Wee's lawyer, Senior Counsel Andre Maniam, told the appeal court that his client never thought she was doing anything wrong. Wee was not entrusted with any of the funds that are the subject of the CBT offences. She was not a signatory to any of the payments made out of CHC's funds. As an accountant, what she did was crunch numbers, and her state of mind was on the disclosure of transactions, not the legitimacy of those transactions. In making his own appeal against the trial judge's ruling of misappropriation of funds, former fund manager Chew Eng Han told the judges that as a layman, he could not see how what he had done was criminal when he read the statute, a point he reiterated in his replies today. Chew had also told the court that the element of faith is very important to the church, and his faith in the crossover project was not extravagant and willful, as the trial judge had said. He explained that his mindset had always been that Sun Ho's music career was not for the benefit of herself or her husband Kong Hee, but for the purpose of the church. At this point, Chew was asked what would have happened if Ho succeeded and decided to keep the profit. Chew defended his belief by stating that Ho had donated all her royalties to humanitarian work. This point was underscored today by Mr. Srinivasan in answer to Justice Chan Seng On if there had been wrongful gain. In appealing for a full acquittal, Sharon Tan's lawyer Paul Seah argued that her behaviour was simply incongruent with that of one intending to cause harm to the church. Seah told the court that Sharon Tan was only a mouthpiece who had limited understanding of the alleged conspiracy to misappropriate the megachurch's funds or to falsify its accounts. At each step of the process, Tan showed eagerness for the plans to be given the green light by the professionals and was assured as such. Seah added that Tan was also not involved in the church's decision to invest in the bonds at the centre of the conspiracy. Her involvement came about when she took over as the church's finance manager from January 2008. In fact, the trial judge himself had found that she had no intent to cause harm to the church. Seah urged that this must thus lead to an acquittal of the charges of criminal breach of trust. The prosecution, which appealed against the trial judge's sentencing, revisited its arguments over the importance of control, intention versus motive, and the absence or presence of dishonest mens rea. The prosecution's 5 grounds for longer sentences were firstly, that the trial judge had failed to consider relevant sentencing precedents, failed to consider the necessity for deterrence in his sentencing considerations, and failed to give due weight to aggravating factors. DPP Ong also added that the trial judge had also given out insufficient sentences to the appellants, especially in the case of Chew, Tan Yee Peng and Wee, where only 2 sentences are to run consecutively. In his replies, Defence Counsel Jason Chan urged the court to consider why this case was unprecedented in that it had the largest amount allegedly misappropriated from a charity, and it was also the largest amount returned to a charity, and the accused parties had put themselves on the line to ensure that all the monies was put back into the church with interest, not for the sake of restitution, but because it had been their intention all along. There should not be a conviction in this case, he argued. If they were to be punished at all, he said, the sentence as passed by the trial judge is already excessive. The bench indicated that they needed to give all the evidence and submissions ample consideration, but that they intend to deliver the verdict as soon as possible. For more information, log on to citynews.sg. I'm Andrea for City News Singapore.